Hey folks, the past couple of months I've been profiling characters from the Sonic the Hedgehog series. I've kind of laser focused in on Team Hooligan recently, and profiled Bean the Dynamite, Fang the Sniper, and Bark the Polar Bear, along with Honey the Cat, who appeared alongside them in the 2012 re-release of Sonic the Fighters. In this video I want to revisit all 4 characters for the final time, and offer a little bit of extra information about all 4, and crucially, I want to correct a few fatal mistakes I originally made, something that particularly plagued my Honey the Cat video, unfortunately. Some YouTube commenters were kind enough to offer me an absolute wealth of information and resources about Team Hooligan and Honey, so this particular bonus video is absolutely full to bursting with obscure lore and knowledge. I absolutely guarantee there'll be at least a few things in here you've never seen or heard before. I want to extend a massive thank you to biggestsonicfan, the internet's foremost Sonic the Fighters scholar, for taking the time to talk me through Honey the Cat's discovery. I also want to thank Sherlock Prower, who sent me some really awesome pictures and scans that I'm excited to share with you shortly. And finally ZM256 for continuing to help me research Team Hooligan. And now, without further ado, let's run through each character one by one, starting with the big boy himself. Let's start by talking about Bark the Polar Bear. I've been able to grab 1 or 2 really cool and rarely seen things since releasing my Bark video a few weeks back. These were all sent over by Fighting Vipers fan Sherlock Prower. Now for starters, Sherlock sent me some higher quality shots of the unofficial Fighters Megamix guidebook comic strips featuring Bark and Bean, so that's cool to see. Next, remember that Fighters Megamix manga book I mentioned? Sherlock has it, and very kindly sent me the pages that involve Bark and Bean. The manga is actually an anthology of short stories, and Bark and Bean only make fleeting appearances in the volume. In one particular story, Janet Marshall, originally from the Virtua Cop series, catches wind that some illegal gambling would be held during a martial arts tournament. After investigating, she tracks down the location of the gamblers and performs a bust, only to find Bark, Bean, Panda-chan and Deku, the Mexican green bean, gambling with children's toy money and Doraemon game pieces. Nevertheless, Janet puts an end to their antics. I love Bean's vacant stare in this comic. Bark also cameos at the end of another story in which Akira from Virtua Fighter tries to recruit people for martial arts training. Bark suddenly appears at the end of the story to smash Akira into the sky. Sherlock was also kind enough to let me know about another manga that I had no idea existed. It's called Sega Game Gag. Apparently it's just one of many volumes collecting together mostly single-page gag comics from the Japanese video game magazine Gamist. This volume, with Honey from Fighting Vipers on the cover, was originally published on November 10th, 1997. It's the 126th volume of the Gamist comics line. This comic has panels featuring the whole Fighters Megamix cast, so there's more than just Team Hooligan inside. There's comics featuring SBO, Knuckles, Sonic, Amy and Tails. I don't read Japanese, so I'm not sure what's going on in all of them, but they're pretty cool to look at. Here's a few Team Hooligan strips. Here's one of Fang getting squished by Amy's Pico Pico hammer attack. Here's another, with Fang firing off his cork gun, and I think winning at a carnival game or something. Here's a strip of Bean and SBO fighting. And here's the best comic of them all, where Sonic and Co find out Bean and Bark are to star in Fighters Megamix along with a bunch of human characters. They imagine them as humans, and this is the result.
Oh no, he's hot!
I also love the fact that Bean and Bark appear in their Fighters Megamix alternate costumes on the rear of this volume. There's Bark in his Santa outfit with a Christmas ham, and up here is Blue Bean, based off Bin from Dynamite Ducks, aka Bean's father. Now of course all of these materials are unofficial, although Game Gag does have copyright Sega on the front. But I think it's really interesting to see that Bean and Bark have appeared in quite a few different things. Next up, let's talk about Fang the Sniper. A lot of my research into Fang came from checking out the Twitter account of his original designer, Shinichi Higashi, who goes by the online handle Toma on Twitter. Higashi has been really open about sharing Fang-related secrets in the past, and I happen to miss quite a few interesting nuggets of his. Here's a few notable things I've seen since releasing the Fang video, most of which were pointed out to me by ZM256. Thanks again. First, Higashi is actually a toy maker, and he's made some really cool figures of Sega characters like Knuckles in the past. Higashi even made a model of Fang at one point too. I'd love to get my hands on that figure because Team Hooligan merch is few and far between. Higashi has also made a range of wolf-like creatures, also called Fang, that kind of look like Fang if he turned into a werewolf or something. There's also more concept art of Fang to be found on Higashi's Twitter that I didn't originally show. Here's a really cool piece that shows Fang coloured grey rather than purple, looking kind of shiny and angular. Here's another piece, showing what Fang's hair looks like under his hat, in case you were ever wondering. An eagle-eyed Tumblr user noticed that Fang seems to have the same style of hair under his hat in the IDW comic books too. Man, the IDW comics really are awesome, aren't they? Someone also noticed that this sketch of Fang has a little character scrawled on the bottom of it. I personally asked Higashi who that little character is. It's a very famous Japanese character called Uncle Rei from the genius Bakabon. Higashi said Fang was originally going to move around like Rei, which he kind of does in Sonic the Fighters. One final Fang fact for you. One of the many inconsistencies in Sonic the Fighters is that Fang has white gloves in his character selection screen icon. What an unbelievable mistake. In terms of Team Hooligan, I left Bean for last because there's not quite as much to say about him that hasn't already been said, but here's some corrections and some cool things worth sharing. First, I made a huge mistake by saying that Sonic and Tails were added to Fighting Vipers by an anonymous developer. That was horrendously wrong. Masahiro Sugiyama added Sonic and Tails to Fighting Vipers and thus was responsible for Sonic the Fighters. Thank you, sir. Also worth noting is that Bean's father and predecessor from Dynamite Ducks, was the alias of long-serving Sega AM2 coder Satoshi Mifune, who'd been with the team since Space Harrier and was the main coder of Dynamite Ducks and the planner/programmer of the Virtua Striker series, which explains why Bean appeared in Virtua Striker 2 and not Sonic. Here's a detail I didn't mention about Bean. Look closely in the background of his stage in Sonic the Fighters and you'll see a sign for a company. You'll notice that he spelled construction wrong on his sign. I really like the idea that Bean runs his own real estate company, but I don't know how he resists the urge to bomb his own houses. The really weird thing about this though is that the phone number on the sign is an actual real estate agent's phone number, so there you go. It's also come to my attention that Bean's species is discussed and specified in more places than I originally mentioned. So here's a really quick retally of the points in favour of him being a duck versus woodpecker. In terms of being a duck, his father, Bin, is a duck in Dynamite Ducks, and that's established in the Master System manual for the game. In Virtua Striker 2, he quacks, and the Virtua Striker 2 website also states he's a duck. In the Archie comic books, Bean is definitely a duck. The director behind Sonic the Fighters, Hiroshi Kataoka, said in an interview that he's a dynamite duck, and the Sonic Jam Guide also says he's a duck. That's 5 points on the duck side. In terms of being a woodpecker, the Fighters Megamix guidebook says he's a woodpecker, and his moveset has woodpecker-like moves. Unfortunately, I originally stated Bean as a woodpecker in the IDW comic series, but that's never stated. So that's only 2 points in favour of him being a woodpecker. It seems as if more sources refer to him as a duck, but plenty of commenters have suggested that Bean might be a hybrid, similar to Fang, a kind of half duck, half woodpecker. I kinda like that theory. A few people have said simply that he's a dynamite, If we overthink things, that might be an original species, so I'm tempted to say that's what he is. Now the big Sonic Encyclopedia is due out very, very soon, and I'm sure that's going to be treated as the definitive answer. So if you're coming from the future and you've read the Sonic Encyclopedia, please let me know what it says so we can put this debate to rest. Finally, let's move on to Honey the Cat. Not part of Team Hooligan, granted, but there's a lot to say about Honey. Because, for the most part, a lot of sources online, be they wikis or otherwise, don't really have the full picture or the full story of Honey's background, discovery, and characteristics. Biggest Sonic Fan, one of the internet's foremost Sonic the Fighters experts, kindly talked me through a timeline of Honey's discovery. He let me know which folks made all the important discoveries about Honey, and he corrected some errors I made in my original video. So let's run through a complete timeline of Honey's discovery, with credits to all the correct people first. The story of Honey's discovery goes back to the summer of 2005, shortly after the release of Sonic Gems Collection. On the now extinct site Sonic Cult, a forum user called Sonic Blur started a thread. After creating some action replay codes to hack Sonic Gems Collection, Sonic Blur discovered a character value for a previously unknown character called Honey. After some initial confusion about who this might be, another user, Cryomancer, correctly identified Honey as being a Fighting Vipers character. Because Honey's model data had been completely removed from Sonic Gems Collection, a workaround to load Honey in-game was to assign Honey's character value to the head data, which is a variable used to assign move data and other bits and bobs, and force the body value to something else like Sonic. This method gave the world its first ever glimpse of Honey the Cat outside Sega AM2 probably. Another user, Omachow Abuser, would follow Sonic Blur's lead and tinker with the original arcade game values on a Model 2 emulator in order to access Honey there. Sonic Blur would try that too and share with the internet one of the most circulated early images of Honey the Cat. It was also in 2005 that the very first piece of Honey fan art was created, commissioned by Biggest Sonic Fan, which is cool. What's funny about 2005 is that nobody was sure what species Honey was even after we got pictures. There was some confusion as to whether she was a cat or a bear. On January 1st, 2006, Biggest Sonic Fan took the baton and started excavating Sonic the Fighters for further secrets, discovering details like Mirror Honey's non-grayscale appearance, and eventually the fact that Honey actually had pigtails, something originally not known because of a timing issue with El-Semi's Model 2 emulator that didn't properly render them. Biggest Sonic Fan's findings were published on Sonic Cult's main site on January 2nd, 2007. Even more so than Biggest Sonic Fan's findings, it seems to have been an early piece of Honey fan art, drawn in Sonic Riders style and uploaded to DeviantArt by a user called Tracker, that led to her cult status amongst fans. Tracker would make a few pieces of Honey fan art, all with no pigtails and white ear tufts. The popularity of Tracker's pieces led to a small explosion of Honey fan art appearing on DeviantArt, which eventually became housed in the Honey the Cat Club, created by Tracker once DeviantArt's club system was introduced. When Honey first cameoed in the Archie comics on the cover of 2012's Sonic Universe issue 40, the blue-eyed and pigtailless Honey seems to be evidence of just how deeply rooted Tracker's influence was over how Honey was portrayed prior to Sonic the Fighters' re-release. Sonic the Fighters re-released in 2012 on Xbox 360 and PS3, and Honey was included as a bonus hidden character. In my original video, I incorrectly suggested that Honey was included in the re-release solely thanks to fans uncovering her, but that's not quite the case. A press release from 2012 reveals that Sega rediscovered Honey themselves and included her as a hidden character on their own accord. Interestingly, they were at the very least aware of Honey's popularity on the internet. The press release states, For some reason, she seems to have been well known overseas, with fan art showing up when you search for her. So fans weren't responsible for Honey the Cat re-emerging. And that is an abridged history of Honey the Cat. Now let's run through some quick-fire corrections from my original video. First, Honey doesn't have Amy's fighting stance, but one that mimics her Fighting Viper's counterpart. Although built around Amy's model, Honey's moveset is almost an exact copy of Knuckles'. Similarly, while Honey's body transforms into Amy's when crushed by Amy's Pico Pico hammer attack, Mirror Honey doesn't have this weird issue, and in fact, normal Honey does have the objects for being squashed in the arcade version, so this just seems like a weird coding glitch. Second, Honey's eyes aren't as dramatically broken as I had first read. It just appears as if Honey's eyes look more towards the camera than any other character in the original arcade game, something that was fixed in the remake. Apologies to Honey for calling her eyes creepy. Third, Honey does have a versus screen portrait that goes unused in the original arcade release. And finally, Honey's armor is probably plastic or rubber, not leather. Let's end the Honey portion of this video by sharing a few really cool new pieces of information. Honey and Amy originally had a sexy move that was removed from the final release of the game. Biggest Sonic Fan has posted a few mock-ups on Twitter of how the move might have looked. All characters were designed to react to this move with a love-struck, blushing face, complete with love heart eyes. The Sonic Encyclopedia, due out later this month, gives us our first official mini profile of the character. There's one particularly interesting bit in her profile, questioning whether her wings are part of her costume or are perhaps real. That really makes you wonder. And I'm happy to report that Honey has made her IDW debut shortly after my original video. You can find her in the free Comic Book Day 2021 comic. One thing that always puzzled me about Honey is why she used to be super yellow and became a slightly darker colour after the 2012 re-release. Apparently there was a small colour issue with early arcade emulation of the game that's since been corrected since the 2012 re-release. So we have two slightly different tones for Honey. I'll end this video by sharing one final interesting fan interpretation regarding Mirror Honey. Every other character in Sonic the Fighters gets cloned during the arcade mode, and their Mirror Fighter version is just a grayscale version of themselves. When Honey gets cloned, Mirror Honey is blonde with a blue dress, a reference to the two-player colours from Honey in Fighting Vipers. What's really fun about this is that some fans online have suggested that Mirror Honey might be a separate, unique character called Candy the Cat, referencing Fighting Viper's Honey alternate name that was used in North America. What do you think about that? And that is my Team Hooligan bonus video complete. A huge thanks to the many people who helped me put this video together. I appreciate all of your help researching this one. If you want to see more Sonic the Fighters or Fighting Vipers goodies, I've put some links to Biggest Sonic Fan and Sherlock's Twitter accounts in the description. The irony of this video is that I've undoubtedly made another mistake or left something else out, but there will not be a Team Hooligan bonus video. Soon it'll be time to move on to covering characters from another game in the franchise. Stay tuned for that and for some non-Sonic videos in the future too. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time.